All right, well, welcome back. If you are a small business owner who has a PPP loan, you are probably thinking about forgiveness. At least it's on your mind in one way or another. And so today we're going to talk about what you should be thinking about and some recommendations that I can give you from my experiences as helping clients through the forgiveness process. I've been helping clients get the money from the very beginning, spend the money, advising them along the way, and then now we're in a situation where we are applying for forgiveness. And as I have been talking to people, I realize there are some common threads and things that I am saying to a lot of people. So I want everybody to be aware of some of these things, okay? So here are some recommendations that I have just from my perspective, from a small business CFO perspective. It's not necessarily advice. You can take it or leave it. It's just things that I have noticed that I think will help most people if they want to take my recommendations, okay? So take it or leave it. This is what it is. And this is what I have been talking to clients about recently. So I thought I'd let you know. All right, so number one is I would love for people to start to watch out in their emails for emails from their bank, okay? So right now, banks are doing lots of different things. Some of them are working on setting up their own portals. Some of them are just having people fill out the 3508 forms and just submit them directly. They have lots of different processes going on, and they're trying to figure out too. And they may have even sent you letters already or emails saying that they're not ready to receive applications. But I have started to see more from some of my clients starting to get notices saying, okay, now they're ready. So the first thing I want you to do is just anything you get from the bank, make sure that you have a little notification on it. Make sure you read it, that you know what's happening with your bank and that you kind of know where their status is. If you're not getting any communication from the bank, it might be a good time to reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do I need to do? All right, my second recommendation is to go ahead and look at the 3508 and the 3508EZ forms. Those are the forgiveness application forms. I think you should go ahead and read through them and see which one you think could apply. Can you apply? Can you use the EZ form? I actually have a video on that talks you through whether or not you would be eligible for the EZ form. A lot of people that I've been working with have been able to with one of the safe harbor options, or if you're just a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, you definitely want to use that form. But go ahead and read through it and see what is required. What is required? Think about that, because your bank, even if your bank doesn't have you submit that form, all of that same information is going to essentially go into that form for the SBA. So you're going to have all of that information one way or another. So that's a way to pre-prepare, even if you can't submit it to your bank yet. You can at least go through and see what do you need, okay? So go ahead and take a look at those forms. My third recommendation would be, if you know that you've spent the money on all the things that you should have, payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, if you know that you can get full forgiveness with the expenses that you've already incurred and you incurred them in the proper period of your covered period, I recommend going ahead and applying for forgiveness. Even if your loan is under $150,000. For a while, I was telling people to wait. If your loan was $150,000 or less, I said, hold off, because blanket forgiveness might be coming down the pike and we just need to, wait for it. And it seemed pretty imminent. Right now, if you watch my video on Wednesday, you'll know that we are still in a level of uncertainty that is pretty high on blanket forgiveness. And we don't really have any guarantees that a second stimulus package is coming. And we are running into pretty high political turmoil times with the election coming up. And it's just looking less and less likely that we know that we are going to get that. So if you're anxious to go ahead and get this loan off of your books, if you just want to have this behind you and you know that you've spent the money on the right things and you have all the documentation for it, why not just do it? Okay, especially if you can go through the process and fill out the EZ form pretty easily. There's really no reason to wait. I mean, it might be easier down the road for you if there is blanket forgiveness, but I'd say if you know you've spent all the money and you are ready, just go ahead and do it. Okay, that's my recommendation. That's what I'm telling people, and I'm going to give you a caveat which might have some people waiting, okay? So my fourth thing is that if you have spent the money as best as you possibly can, but maybe you got the wrong loan amount. So maybe you applied with independent contractor fees, or maybe you applied using the wrong number. So you got more money than you really should have. You misapplied, and it was, no fault of your own. You might have even tried to go fix it with your bank. If that was the case and you can't get full forgiveness as you're looking through all your stuff, and now knowing all the rules that we know now, especially around owner's compensation and some of these other things, if you're looking through and you know that you can't get full forgiveness and you do have a loan under $150,000, I would recommend waiting, okay? Because if that is the situation, you might be able to get the full loan forgiven even if you misapplied and got a little bit more than you needed, okay? Well, and I don't want to say needed because you probably did need the loan. I just mean what was allowed under the rules at the time, okay? So if you don't think that you can get 100% of your loan forgiven right now, and it is under $150,000, I would recommend waiting on applying for forgiveness, okay? Just gonna put that out there. Now, when you are going to certify whatever, even if there's a blanket forgiveness or a really easy application, you will go and have to read those certifications and make sure that you can truthfully, honestly, before the law, check box those certifications, okay? So do not pass that over. That is very important. That's all I'm gonna say about that. All right, my fifth recommendation is to really think through what is going to be the easiest thing to document as I go and prove out this loan. A lot of us, what happened is we applied when we thought there was an 8-week covered period, and we were limited to 2.5 times our payroll cost of what the total loan amount could be. And now that we had 24 weeks to use this money, we have a lot more payroll costs than we originally thought we would have. So you went from having 2.5 times your payroll costs to now having that spread over almost 6 months. So what I'm seeing with people is that they have enough payroll reports and payroll support to prove out that they spent almost all their money on payroll. And I'm not even I don't even want to get into the fact that I put the money in a separate account and I paid my rent out of that account and I paid my payroll out of that account for 2.5 months or whatever. I'm not worried about that, because that bank statement that you have doesn't have to be a supporting document for your loan forgiveness. And I don't want to overcomplicate it in this video, because I am going to do 2 videos on the documentation you need for your loan forgiveness application. But what I'm saying is that we might be able to choose things that make it easier to prove that you spent the money on things like payroll costs. And because when you pull a report from a third-party payroll provider, that is evidence that you have spent the money, okay? So if you have ADP reports or Gusto or QuickBooks or Paychecks or all the other things, those are third-party payroll reports. And you might be able to show, 4 months of payroll reports, and then your loan is totally spent from those 4 months. So that makes documenting your PPP expenses that much easier. Rather than maybe going and having to prove, a small little utility bill and showing a canceled check from when you did that. It just makes your application simpler. It makes it cleaner. When you go to review it, it's going to make it that much more straightforward for the bank and for the SBA. So there's just less questions. There's less questions. And when you make the documentation easier, it's going to make the forgiveness process smoother. Okay, so that's my recommendation to you. I hope that's not too confusing. I'm going to get into it more in the documentation videos to come, okay? All right, my last recommendation to you is to over-document, but keep it to yourself. You can potentially write memos to your file. Let's say that you needed to support the that one of your employees left, and you need to give the condition of why they left. So let's say they left because they had disciplinary action, or they left on their own. They chose to leave on their own, and you tried to get them back, but they did not want to come back. A lot of documentation needs to happen around any changes in employees. And again, we're going to get into this more in the documentation videos, but I do want you to make sure that you have a file, and this is beyond really a recommendation, this is a requirement, that you need to have a file somewhere, digitally, physically. If it's physical, I recommend backing it up digitally, that has additional supporting documentation regarding your PPP loan, okay? Think about all the files that you originally used for getting your loan. You could put them in there. You could also do anything that you think that supports you spending the money in the proper way, and anything that supports you being able to certify why you think your costs are eligible for the PPP loan. So, or let's say if you think you are eligible for one of the safe harbor options, put anything that you think that would support you being able to take that safe harbor, put it in the file, okay? This file could be really big. I'm totally fine with that. You don't have to submit it to the SBA. You don't have to submit it to your bank. But what it is for you is you are building up kind of a war chest of evidence that you don't want to be looking for 5 years from now. You want to have it on your person. If for whatever reason you guys need it down the line, you have it and it's there and it's safe and secure. Because audits, when they happen, it's very, very difficult to go and find the right document down the road, like when 3 or 4 years later. So please go ahead and start storing all that extra documentation, the stuff you are not sending into your bank, and put it in that file, okay? And then write notes to yourself. It's totally fine to do that. Write a letter to the file explaining what each item is, explaining anything weird that happened, explaining if you didn't have a formal lease, but you had kind of an informal sublease for a long period of time. All of that stuff is important, and all of that stuff is really valid for the purposes of supporting your loan, okay? Well, those are my recommendations. That's what I'm seeing from clients and things that I have been telling people, and I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record, so I thought I'd go ahead and get it out onto YouTube. If this is helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if it's really helpful, please share it with somebody else that you think might want to know these tips and tricks, all right? Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye.